Hello. Today is Monday, August the 3rd, 2026. My name is Greg Gilbert, and I'm currently the chairman of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy. It is 8:30 a.m., and I would like to call the meeting to order. Notice of this meeting, including date, time, and location, has been posted on our website. The agenda for this meeting was posted to the website on July 27th, 2026. As the first order of business, I would like to conduct a roll call to ensure that we have a quorum. Karen, would you please call the roll?
Greg Gilbert,
Present.
John Griesbeck,
Present.
Rob Vance,
Present.
Sam Bennett,
Present.
Andy Bonner,
Present.
Brad Buchanan,
Present.
Michael Bryant,
Present.
David Crenshaw,
Present.
Brad Floyd,
Present.
Daniel Moore.
Present.
Thank you. It appears that we have a quorum. Individuals who wish to make a public comment on an item listed on the posted agenda during the scheduled public comment period will need to sign in on the provided sign-in sheet or by placing their name in the chat box online. Excuse me. It is requested that comments be limited to 3 minutes out of respect for other speakers. And this time, I would like to welcome visitors. We have some visitors with us today. Kara Fitzgerald, of course, is the president and CEO of the Tennessee Society of CPAs. And thank you for being with us, Kara. And we have some other folks. Lee, would you mind to introduce our paralegal?
Yes, sir. I'm just briefly introducing Lakeisha Largen, sitting behind me. She's our paralegal. She has been assigned to the board. Chris Russell has done an outstanding service. He's working with a different group starting after today's meeting. So Lakeisha, welcome.
Thank you. And we also have 2 legal interns with us, correct? And I understand you all are doing a presentation for us in a couple minutes. Yeah, welcome. We're glad to have you with us today. We also welcome back Andy Bonner. Andy has agreed to continue serving in his board role for this meeting of the Board of Accountancy, as an appointment to fill his vacated seat is still pending. And we do have a plaque to give to Andy in recognition of his years of service to the board. But we're going to wait until the end because I'm going to work Andy really hard today, and we don't want him to get content sitting over there looking at a plaque. So we will do that later. But seriously, thank you, Andy, for your service and also for driving me over to the meeting. We received notice last week that reappointments for 3 board members has been confirmed. Sam Bennett and Brad Floyd have been reappointed for additional 3-year terms. And John Griesbeck has been reappointed to serve his 3rd term for the board. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you for your service to the board. I would also like to recognize 2 State Board of Accountancy members who recently received TSCPA Apex Awards. The awards program recognizes the many ways that individuals contribute significant time, energy, and intellect to developing the accounting profession and fostering its success. John Griesbeck, to my right, was recently presented with one of the TSCPA's 2026 awards. That was the Lifetime Achievement Award. And that is given in recognition of a TSCPA member who has exhibited leadership and significant contributions to the profession and had an outstanding record of service to the society and the local community. John, I know you've been congratulated by the TSCPA, but this board also congratulates you.
Appreciate
you. And the second one is Dr. Amelia Hart, who couldn't be with us today, but Dr. Hart is one of our board members, of course, and she was recently presented with the 2026 TSCPA PEX Women to Watch Experienced Leader Award. The Women to Watch Award highlights the accomplishments of women in the profession, and the award is given in 2 categories: experienced leaders and emerging leaders. And so that is a well-deserved honor too, and we congratulate Dr. Hart on that. This is really good news. The TSCPA nominating committee has indicated they've submitted the following members of our board for a term on the 2026, 2027 NASBA Board of Directors. Andy Bonner has been selected to serve a 3-year term as vice chair, and then past chair of the NASBA board. So, Andy, as I understand it, you will become vice chair officially at the October annual meeting. And then a year from now, Andy will be chair of NASBA. And I think that's well deserved. Andy spent his whole career working on behalf of the profession, promoting individuals in profession, mentoring individuals, and certainly is a friend to all of us. And so, Andy, congratulations on that award, well deserved. And would also like to take a moment and recognize Michael Bryant. Michael is one of our newest board members, maybe our newest board member on the Tennessee Board of Accountancy.
Hope so.
But Michael was selected to serve a 1-year term as the Southeast Regional Director for NASBA. So Michael will be our representative for NASBA. So Michael, congratulations to you also. I would remind board members to please turn on your microphones when speaking. Just a few of these mics are operational at any given time. So, and I'm the worst offender of that, so I'm preaching to myself, not necessarily to you. And also, just a reminder that we will be electing officers at the end of this meeting. And so, if you haven't given that thought before today, please consider individuals that you would like to serve in our officer roles. Our next order of business this morning is to review and adopt the meeting agenda. Members, if you would please review the agenda provided in your meeting materials. And if there are no proposed changes, I will need a motion and second to adopt the agenda. So moved. We have a second? Second. Those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. Thank you. Next, we will review and approve the minutes from the May 5th, 2026 meeting of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy. The draft minutes were provided in your advanced materials and are on your iPads. I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I hear a second? Thank you. Those who approve, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Thank you. There are a lot of individuals that I need to thank today. But one of them, excuse me, is our board attorney, Lee Lott. During my time as chair, I have certainly leaned heavily on Lee. And Lee, I'm sure you'll be glad when a new chair comes into office and your phone won't ring as much maybe, but but in all seriousness, Lee has certainly been very helpful to me. And I'm very appreciative of all that you've done, Lee. And you have really helped this board. And prior to your tenure, we had several different attorneys who served on the board. So it's been really nice to have you for an extended period of time. And I know you've not been with us 10 years or anything like that, but the time you've been with us has been great and is much appreciated. But at this time, I would like to turn the agenda over to Lee. He's going to talk us through some ADA compliance training.
Yes, sir. We have new guidance from the federal government under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it concerns digital content. Of course, when we hold a meeting, when the board holds a meeting, the board is broadcasting that meeting over the internet. And we want to make sure that anyone with a disability is reasonably accommodated. And we want to improve and create accessibility under the law. And this is a 12 or 13 page PowerPoint, but I can tell you it's the key points for us are simply stated. And we can go to the next slide. The purpose is very simple. We want fair, organized meetings. I think this board does a great job of that already, thankfully. The Roberts Rules is something that we use with skill and conscientiousness, and I think that clarity of meetings is something we already do. You can, I'll just really fly through this PowerPoint. Our standard framework is by Roberts Rules. The key to that is to stay on a topic at a time, and so that anyone observing the meeting or participating in the meeting knows what is being discussed, what questions are being put to the board, who is talking, and what documents are being used. You always want to have clarity. That's the ultimate goal here. Go ahead. Accessibility, of course, is the key concept for persons with disabilities. We wanted to all before today have clarity just so we know what we're doing. But after today, we also want to make sure that anyone with a disability can overcome any particular obstacles. Go ahead. Part of this effort, and let me briefly state, this is not something we have to commence today. It will be next year. This is kind of a heads up. That's what the purpose of this PowerPoint is, to give a heads up to the board. And the staff is already working on accessibility. Part of the accessibility challenge is to make sure that a digital document is accessible. So you would think, oh, well, okay, if there's someone, say, is hearing impaired, you can read the document. But there are lots of different disabilities, and digital documents present a certain challenge, because if you have like an electronic reader, you want to make sure that everything on the document registers with the reader. And sometimes a signature or some image might pop up, and you and I can see it just fine, but someone who's using a reader might not understand what the signature is, or the image, a chart, a graph, unless it is somehow registered with the electronic reader. It has to be prepared. It takes frankly, some software skills to do that. So a big part of that we're working on behind the scenes is to make sure that each document that we put online is accessible. Go ahead. But for our meetings here, really the focus is a little different. Again, like I say, it has to do with clarity. One of the things you'll do for clarity at the beginning of the meetings, we're going to start having an accommodation statement, just so anyone who has a disability who's observing the meeting will know how to access the content. Sometimes that takes special instruction. We have to give a special link, or at least give someone a heads up that, yes, this is going to be prepared for certain readers or other electronic aids. Okay. Now, this is probably the key thing that we'll have to remember to do. And I think we largely already do it. We have to identify each speaker, and maybe a slight change is that we're going to have to do that each time a member speaks. And I think at first that might be a little cumbersome. If you make a comment, you say, okay, this is Lee Lott. My comment is this, or just go ahead and say your comment. And then 4 minutes later, you might have to do it again and start by saying your name. Now the chair can run this however the chair wishes. The chair might want to simply identify each speaker. Maybe it's a simple raising of the hand, and the speaker can call on, the chairman can call on the speaker. And these are just examples. Again, I think this is what the board already does. The board is pretty good about clarity. This is I think that we're already conscious of the audience. We have an audience here in the room. It's a public meeting. We have access over the internet. So I think already we're being pretty clear, but this will require kind of that extra effort where you just kind of want to stop and think, all right, is it clear who's Motion is pending. Is it clear what document we're talking about? Is it clear who is talking? Go ahead. I think that's the same thing, basically. It's, again, this is kind of follows along with Robert's rules, which we already used. Now, this is something that we occasionally encounter. If we're talking about, for example, the legal report, we just want to make sure we announce at the beginning that that is the document we're looking at. And that is, I think, something we already do. But, you know, you'll notice in the agenda, each time, each meeting, there might be other documents. And so when a document is being discussed, we want to make sure we stick with that document, identify it first, and before we go switching to a different document, kind of make sure that that is clear on the record. Yeah, this applies to the staff too. It's going to be tough for me to remember. Anytime I speak, I'm going to have to make sure I, announce myself. Most of the time, the chairperson calls on me or any other staff member. But if we have something to interject, we're going to have to remember to say our name. So if we forget, please remind us. I think this is the same message. Go ahead. This is kind of an interesting topic. There's I don't know if you've ever read a transcript that lays out a conversation that you participated in, but if you ever do, you'll see it's a kind of an alien experience when you go back and read words that you said and see how it appears on a piece of paper. You'll start to recognize the issues that you face. Sometimes something is perfectly clear when you're talking and just having a conversation. And this board, of course, deliberates on its issues and has essentially a conversation on each issue. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that when it's reduced to writing or it's recorded in video format, that it's clear what we were doing and who was doing it. That's all.
So Lee, by way of example, you just finished your presentation, then do I re-announce my name at this point?
Yeah, yes, sir. And it will be cumbersome at first, especially for the chair, because no one introduces you. You kind of do the introducing, right? So the specific way you do it is up to you and what seems natural at the time, or as natural as possible. But yes, that's exactly right. And it probably would help when I finish, I could simply say, Mr. Chairman, I give the floor back to you, or something like that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Lee. This is Greg Gilbert, Chair. Are there questions or comments? Good. So we're learning and we will work through this. Thank you very much, Lee, for the presentation.
Yes, sir.
And Kyle, also thank you for your service in our legal department too. I mentioned Lee because he was doing the presentation, but I'm also very appreciative. The board is very appreciative of the work that you've done for us. So thank you. Okay. Also need to thank our executive director who is on the agenda next, but when I was elected chair of this board 2 years ago, one of the first phone calls I got after being elected was Wendy calling to let me know that she was resigning from the TSCPA. And so we were fortunate through a lot of really good work. And I was actually headed out of the country when Wendy called me. And so Reed Witcher and I talked, Reed's with the Department of Commerce and Insurance, and Reed and I discussed the plan to hire an executive director, and I strongly suggested that Brad Floyd be involved because Brad had actually helped hire Wendy years ago, 9 years before Jen came on board. And so Brad got involved, and Brad and Reed, and some others interviewed, and we got a great executive director. But all that to say, I want to thank Jen, because Jen, you've done a remarkable job the past 2 years and certainly helped keep me on track and given me a lot of advice and counsel. And you are a wonderful leader, and we're very fortunate to have you. So at this point, I think you have an executive director's report for us.
I do. Thank you for those kind words. Jen Binkley, Executive Director. Good morning, board members. You have on your iPads a copy of my report, and I will go ahead and read that for the record now. I have listed their future meeting dates all on Monday going forward. November 2nd, 2026, February 1st, 2027, May 3rd, 2027, August 2nd, 2027, and November 1st, 2027. We are working on getting those posted to our website as we speak. We have one upcoming NASPA meeting before the end of the calendar year. The 119th annual meeting will be held October 25th through 28th in Litchfield Park, Arizona. Our budget allows for 5 board members to attend, and I think I've heard from a couple of you that you've expressed interest in going. If you would let me know by the end of this week if you would like to attend. We're going to start working on travel plans soon. Next, the AICPA peak exposure draft on proposed revisions related to alternative practice structures. So as requested by the board at the May meeting, board staff submitted a comment letter to the AICPA Professional Ethics Executive Committee in response to the request to comment on the AICPA peak exposure draft. A copy of the letter that was submitted on behalf of the board is included in Exhibit 1 to my report. Peak received 81 comment letters in response to the exposure draft. They're planning to host an open meeting, I think tomorrow and Wednesday, to review the APS task force recommendations based on comments received in response to the exposure draft. A link to register for the meeting, should you wish to attend and hear their feedback, is linked in my report. Several members of the Board of Accountancy and myself attended the NASPA Western Regional meeting at the end of June. Our delegation included board members Greg Gilbert, John Griesbeck, Andy Bonner, Amelia Hart, and Michael Bryant, along with myself. Notable updates include an update from the CPE task force. So I reported on this at the May meeting, and they shared a brief update with attendees in June. NASPA and the AICPA created the CPE task force in 2025 to review CPA continuing education requirements for relevance and effectiveness. Members include representatives from both organizations' leadership, as well as representation from boards of accountancy, CPA firms, state CPA societies, academia, and the public for broad perspectives. The task force expects to have evidence-based recommendations for exposure at the end of this calendar year. At the time of the presentation this summer, the task force was in its data collection phase. An independent third-party research firm has been retained to launch the study, perform surveys, and engage focus groups. Attendees heard an overview of the planned process from representatives from the research firm. We also heard an update from the Alternative Practice Structures PE Task Force. There was a panel discussion held among members. The conference attendees heard from members of the task force in a panel discussion. Topics of discussion included summaries of the feedback received on the task force's white paper that was issued in October 2025. The task force indicated that there was broad agreement that audit quality and independence remain paramount in APS structures with private equity investment. There was strong emphasis from boards on governance safeguards, maintaining CPA control, and the need for stronger and more rigorous board oversight and/or peer review oversight of governance, ownership, and independence controls. And I'll mention too, subsequent to putting my report together, we got an email from NASPA, I think on Friday. The task force has released an updated recommendation memo. So I will be reviewing that this week, and I expect more discussion with the board at our next board meeting. Lastly, I'll highlight, we heard an update on the AICPA's Profession Ready initiative. Carl Mays, who's the AICPA VP of Ethics and Firm Quality, shared an update on the AICPA's Profession Ready initiative. The Profession Ready initiative is a research-backed effort intended to identify and develop the skills early career CPAs need to succeed in a rapidly changing environment. The project intends to deliver a skills framework to guide the training and development of early career CPAs, learning solutions that use emerging technologies to help professionals quickly build their skills, and teaching resources for colleges and universities. All right. I'll also share a financial update for this board. A detailed financial update of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy through May 31st, 2026 has been provided in Exhibit 2 to my report, as well as a report on recent travel expenses incurred by board staff. I'll highlight through the end of May, our board has experienced a surplus this year of $55,716. I have yet to see even preliminary results for the fiscal year, but I'm on pins and needles waiting for that report to come in. And as of the end of May, we had a reserve balance of $1,574,890. Travel over the last quarter for board staff included my travel to the TSCPA convention in South Carolina, as well as to the NASBA Western Regional Meeting. And we also incurred some not significant travel expenses for Duke related to travel for an investigation and a board meeting. All right. Recently, NASBA announced that there were changes to the statement on standards for continuing professional education programs. So as a reminder, the statement on standards for CPE programs is published jointly by the AICPA and NASBA to provide a framework for the development, presentation, measurement, and reporting of CPE programs. The standards were recently revised in consideration of the advancements in technology and learning platforms. I've included a summary of the changes as they relate to the rules of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy. The 2026 standards allow for group classes to earn 0.5 or 1.0 credits initially. Our rules allow for an initial credit of 1.0 with increments of 0.2 or 0.5 hours after the initial credit hour. In addition, the 2026 standards have merged nano learning into self-study and propose to allow 0.2 or 0.5 credits for self-study courses initially. Our rules have nano and self-study as two distinct learning programs with an initial credit increment of 0.2 hours for nano learning and 0.5 hours for self-study. These rules are on the UAA committee's agenda to consider in future revisions of the UAA model rules. In my opinion, those are fairly insignificant changes to the to the standards. But in the event that NASBA and the AICP or NASBA looks to align the UAA model rules to the new standards, the update to the standards, I think that would be the time that I would suggest we consider a rule change as well. I'll pause there. Before I move on, are there any questions or concerns on what I've shared so far? Okay, hearing none. I will continue on. So I shared a snapshot here of our CPE audit status as of last Monday, July 27th. This year we selected 602 licenses for an audit of CPE compliance. Audit notification emails were sent to selected licensees on May 4th, 2026, with reminders emailed on June 23rd. Certified letters were sent to 34 licensees who had not responded as of July 8th, and I have included a snapshot showing a summary of CPE audit results by status, like I said, as of Monday, July 27th. What I'll highlight here is that the current compliance rate for processed audits is 97.5%, which includes licensees who self-identified CPE noncompliance at renewal and completed penalty hours. I'll provide an update at the November board meeting with final results. And also, I think last I checked, we only had 8 people who had not responded as of Thursday or Friday. So I think that's tremendous. Our education coordinator, Leanne Blair, does a lot of work to reach out to licensees who have not responded, and I appreciate her work on that. I've also included a snapshot of CPA exam performance through the end of Q2 2026. You'll see we're continuing the trend of ticking up in terms of both section volume being taken and pass rates. I think last I looked, we were not quite to pre-COVID levels, but we're getting closer there. We're getting closer to that. And we're trending, I should also add, we're trending with national trends as well in Tennessee. Performance metrics for Q2. So these are metrics that I and my team are evaluated on. We have a goal of 7 days to licensure for first-time licensees in Tennessee. Our goal is 7 days. Last quarter, we hit 7.6 days. And then we have a goal of a 95% customer service satisfaction rating. And last quarter, we achieved a 96% customer satisfaction rating. And then finally, the last 2 pages of my report are just some snapshots of metrics on total new licenses issued, new firm permits issued during the year, as well as a snapshot of the total number of licenses by status that we are regulating in Tennessee. I think the thing that I'll highlight here under the new licenses and permits issued through the end of June 2026, we have licensed 24 new CPAs under the new 120+2 pathway. Okay, I'll pause there. That concludes my report. And again, I'm happy to answer questions or address board members' concerns.
Questions? Jen, this is Greg Gilbert. Jen, will you remind me and us, the self-sufficiency rules? So if the board has a small loss for the year, we've got one more month to receive reporting on it. Do we attend the self-sufficiency hearing? Is there a materiality number on that? Do you know?
I'm not aware of a materiality threshold. So
Okay.
if any board that is has had a loss or a deficit for 2 consecutive years, no matter how small, will be required to attend that hearing.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we will move to licensing matters. Jen?
Thank you. Jen Binkley, Executive Director. I am going to be the worst. I can tell you now, I'm going to be the worst offender about remembering to say my name before I speak. So you'll have to help me. All right. Under licensing matters today, we have 3 requests for the board to consider granting exam credit extension. I will read those. And then I also have one item on the agenda, discussion of the CPA exam notarization and photo form, which you did not have pre-read materials for, but there is a form that I will reference on your iPads when we get to that section. All right, so the first request for an exam credit extension, I'll read the applicable rule once, and then I'll read all 3 requests, and then the board can consider and discuss at that time, if that's okay with all of you. All right, so when we think about these 3 requests, the applicable statute and or board rule 0020-01-.066E states the following: notwithstanding subsections A, B, and C of this rule, the period of time in which to pass all required test sections of the examination may be extended by the board upon a showing that the credit was lost by reason of individual hardship, including but not limited to health, military service, disruption at a local, regional, or national level impacting the candidate, or other circumstances beyond the candidate's control. So request number 1, a Tennessee CPA candidate has requested that the board consider an extension request for his reg and audit scores from an expiration date of April 30th, 2026 to December 31st, 2026 for both sections. The board has previously voted to approve extensions of these scores from June 30th, 2025 to April 30th, 2026. The candidate has also requested that the board consider an extension request for his TCP score from December 27th, 2026 to December 31st, 2026 to align with the requested expiration dates for reg and audit. The medical condition that previously prevented the candidate from sitting for the exam persists. The candidate provided an updated note from his doctor supporting a request for an extension through December 31st, 2026. As I previously mentioned, these scores were previously approved by the board for an extension from June 30th, 2025 to April 30th, 2026. Notably, this candidate has also passed TCP, which I mentioned, for which credit will expire on December 27th, 2026. The only section he has left to take is FAR. The candidate has indicated that he is working with his doctor to begin studying for FAR in mid-August. He intends to take FAR in October, leaving a window of time at the end of the year to retest in case of any unforeseen issues with the testing plan. All right, that is, and then a score summary has been included with that request. All right, request number 2. A Tennessee CPA candidate has requested that the board reinstate her reg score, which expired on February 22nd, 2026. She has passed all 4 parts of the exam, though the final section, bar, was passed after the expiration of her reg score. The candidate was scheduled to take her final section, bar, on January 31st, 2026, and the exam was canceled due to weather. She rescheduled to February 3rd, 2026, when an extension was offered by NASPA and the AICPA. However, that exam was also canceled due to winter weather, and no other extension was offered for the January testing window for the discipline sections. The candidate sat for and passed bar on April 29th, 2026. That was the final section of the exam needed to pass all 4 parts. However, since reg expired on February 22nd, 2026, she lost credit for that section. Prometric confirmed to board staff the candidate's timeline and that the test centers where the candidate was scheduled to test were in fact closed due to winter weather conditions on the dates she was scheduled to test. And I've included a score summary there. So I think of note, if an extension is granted on number 2, the candidate will have passed all 4 parts of the CPA exam. All right, and then the last request, a Tennessee CPA candidate has requested that the board grant a 6-month extension on the expiration date of her exam credit for BEC from an expiration date of June 26, 2026 to December 26, 2026. She has passed BEC audit and reg. Her last remaining section to pass is FAR. The candidate contacted the board on May 18th, 2026, requesting a 6-month extension on BEC, and she provided the following explanation as support for her request. I'll read this. I passed the BEC section in December 2023. While I'm incredibly grateful for the 36-month transition policy that extended my credit to this coming June, balancing, that was June 30th, 2026, I think. Well, now I'll come back to that. Balancing the remaining parts of the exam alongside major personal and professional milestones over the past year has proven to be a significant logistical challenge. In September 2025, I gave birth to my son. Leading up to his birth, navigating a full-time professional workload while managing the physical demands of late-stage pregnancy made the extended periods required for rigorous study and testing very difficult. Since his arrival, caring for an infant while maintaining my career has understandably limited my available study windows. Despite these challenges, I remain deeply committed to earning my CPA license and have actively tried to keep the momentum going. Since making the request, the candidate has sat for and passed audit. The remaining section to be taken is FAR. All right, and I also included a score summary for that candidate as well. So that concludes the 3 requests that are before the board for exam credit extensions. I'm happy to take any questions on this.
Questions? Comments? Discussion?
This is Sam Bennett. I have a question about the 3rd one and just whether there's any precedents for similar requests,
For the nature of the request?
the nature of the request.
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. The board may have more history than I do, though.
Thank you.
This is Brad Buchanan. I have a question on number 2. And maybe I'm misreading this, but it would appear that BEC has not been passed. Is that correct? Or is this not updated?
So BEC, when the disciplines rolled out in early 2024, it eliminated the requirement to take BEC. So this candidate chose to take bar as her discipline.
Okay.
That's correct. BEC has not been passed, but at this point, it's not required to be.
Okay. Thank you.
If there is no more discussion, do we have a motion to approve the recommended credit extensions?
So moved.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Thank you. Ms. Binkley, would you like to proceed with the CPA exam notarization and photo form?
Yes,
Information.
thank you. Jen Binkley, Executive Director. So you have on your iPads a sample form. It's a CPA exam notarization and photo form. This is a form that is required to be completed by CPA exam candidates as part of their submission of their application to NASPA to take the exam. NASPA has requested that the board consider removing the requirement for CPA exam candidates to complete and submit this form with their application to take the exam. Based on the rules that I'm about to read to you, I felt it prudent and necessary to bring this to the board for your consideration rather than making the decision on my own authority. So here are the applicable rules that relate to the application to take the exam. I'm going to read them to you. 0020-01-.051 states the following. Applications to take the certified public accountant exam must be made on a form provided by the board or its designee and filed with the board or its designee by a due date specified by the board or its designee in the application form. All applications for initial examination or re-examination shall be accompanied by the current fee being charged by the board or such entity as is approved by the board. And then Board Rule 0020-01-.052 states the following. An application will not be considered filed until the application fee and examination fee required by these rules and all required supporting documents have been received, including proof of identity as determined by the board and specified on the application form, official transcripts, and proof that the candidate has satisfied the education requirement. So the notarization and photo form, a copy of which can be found on your iPad, is one of the documents required to be provided by Tennessee CPA exam candidates to NASBA as part of the exam application process. NASBA has indicated that this form is not a NASBA-driven requirement and is rather something that, in the past, the Tennessee board has made a requirement to be included in the exam application. NASBA has also indicated that Tennessee is one of only 5 jurisdictions that require some iteration of this form, either just the photo or just the notarization or both, like our form is currently. 2 other items of note. This form is not used by NASBA or Prometric to verify the identity of a candidate at a Prometric test center on the day that a candidate takes the exam. Prometric requires candidates to submit 2 forms of identification that match a candidate's notice to schedule that's issued by NASBA. Use of these forms goes back to the days of the paper-based CPA exam when candidate photos would be collected during the application process to match to IDs if there were issues at the test events. So the ask before the board today is to consider whether we can eliminate the requirement for Tennessee CPA exam candidates to provide the notarization and photo form at application for the CPA exam. And I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Questions or discussion?
You're saying that they don't actually use this form?
It's not a form that NASBA requires. It's driven by, the application is driven by the requirements of the Tennessee board. And I think this is a form that has been included for some time, that may perhaps just be a kind of a relic of the paper exam days.
So what currently is done with it? Like, what happens with this form?
It's included in the application, and that's, as far as I know, that is it. That's what NASBA has indicated. There are other processes in place to identify candidates, especially at Prometric, to identify candidates that are there to test or that are applying for the test.
Michael Bryant. So Jen, this application package, which includes this form, goes directly to NASBA or through the board. So it goes directly to NASBA. NASBA's not using it. They're only doing it because we require them to do it.
That's correct.
This is Rob Vance. Why does NASBA care, really?
Well, that's a good question. I think based on feedback that I have heard about the exam application process, getting this form from candidates tends to be, if a candidate is going to have a deficient exam application process, it's most likely because they don't have this form completed, or it's not notarized, or it's not complete. So that was, I think, why the ask came to us to reconsider.
Andy Bonner, board member. Jen, I think this is logical. I think this is a relic of the past. I can remember having to go get my photo printed at Walmart or Walgreens and putting it in. So with the technology that exists today and everything that's occurring on the NASBA side for verification and Prometric, I'm in favor of getting rid of this form.
Okay. I think it would improve their process, is my perspective on it. But Other than that, I don't feel strongly one way or the other to keep it or get rid of it.
Sam Bennett, I'm having a hard time understanding what the value of the form is if we were to keep it. I mean, if they're using a different process to identify the applicant when they sit for the exam, and it's not being used by NASBA in the application process, other than just verifying that they've met our requirement, it seems kind of redundant and inefficient.
John Griesbeck, I agree with all the previous comments. Plus, it's just an inconvenience for the applicant, you know, to get a notary and another picture. So.
This is Rob Vance again. Is there another place in the application where the individual certifies that all of the above information that I'm submitting is accurate under penalties of perjury or whatever it may say? Does it say something like that?
I can't say for sure. I know on ours, once they get ready for licensure, there certainly is. I would imagine NASBA has something similar, but I can confirm.
I would guess they need to sign something,
Mhm,
right? And if it's not this form, it would be something
mhm.
that to certify that I'm submitting this and this is my name and I'm signing this. Just like you'd sign anything, tax return or whatever. Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Would anyone like to make a motion that we modify this process?
Andy Bonner, board member, I make a motion.
Sam Bennett, second.
Motion is made and we have a second. And I'm not sure that we've clearly stated the motion. Jen, you thought about the language? We're basically removing the requirement to submit the photo and notarization form.
I
Is
would, Jen Binkley, I would propose we structure the motion in a way that removes the requirement, the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy's requirement, but allows NASBA the flexibility to continue using it if in the future they decide. Because the rule language does point to a lot to our designee, which NASBA is our designee in this case. So perhaps a motion that would remove our requirement, but allow NASBA the flexibility to use it if they deem necessary in the future.
Greg Gilbert, is this motion your intent, Mr. Bonner?
That was my intent when I made the motion.
And Mr.
Mr.
Bennett,
Chairman.
that's the motion you seconded? Okay. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Thank you very much. Jen, you may, this is Greg Gilbert. Jen, you may need to double check this, but as you were speaking, I was thinking about your executive director's report. Was there anything in there that needs board approval? I believe the dates have already been approved, correct? So.
That is correct. Jen Binkley, I did not have any action. to
Board
be
action,
taken by
okay,
board.
good. Just, Greg Gilbert, just wanted to clarify that, so thank you very much. Okay, it's time for our legal report, and I will ask Mr. Bonner to present or in conjunction with Mr. Lee and Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Bonner, board member. Today, we've got the legal report. We have 15 cases. We have 9 cases on the consent matter. We have 10 through 13 is proposed discipline, and then 14 and 15 is representations. You know, you don't get to say this much, but I get to work with 2 great attorneys, and they really do a great job of getting the information to me timely and allowing me to review and give comments back. Plus our staff and Duke and everything they do is just amazing. It didn't run as smooth and sometimes, but they have really smoothed the process out and done a fantastic job. And Jen, thank you for your guidance on that and getting that together. But we'll start today with the consent agenda, and we'll just, if it's okay with everyone, we'll just present it all at once and then vote on the cases 1 through 9 as it's presented. In the report that you have, if you see a red LL, that is Lee Lott. And if you see a KJ, then that's Kyle Johnson. And so I'll allow them to start with our first consent agenda item, and that has the red letters LL, and I'll let Mr. Lott jump in and explain that case to us. Mr. Lott?
Yes, sir, Mr. Bonner. This is Lee Lott. Yeah, the consent agenda has cases 1 through 9, and I'll do 1 through 5. And Mr. Johnson will do 6 through 9. 1 through 5 basically break down into 2 categories. The first 3 are kind of cases that concern a test work or a peer review enrollment. The other 2 cases concern tax prep. So I'll start with number 1. Here we have a CPA firm that is trying to go through the peer review process. This particular firm is in a rural area. Not many firms nearby do attest work. There's a great need for the attest work with building contractors and similar assignments. So this firm is trying to go through the process. The firm did miss one deadline, but ultimately accomplished the task. There was a miscommunication at a certain point. The firm was dropped out of peer review, and the firm said, wait, we still want to go through this. And so they were quickly re-enrolled a little over a month later, and they're still enrolled. There's no allegation that they're doing a test work without being enrolled, okay? There is, the evidence doesn't show that. It just shows they missed a deadline. They have been given other tasks. I think they accomplished one of the key tasks this past Friday. I just heard from Duke. Duke said to investigate this quite a bit to confirm the allegations and the defense by the respondent. While there's technically a deadline that was missed, my recommendation here, because we're dealing with a firm that is trying, and it is for the most part accomplishing and working closely with the peer reviewer, my recommendation here would be to close with a letter of warning. Of course, this board has authority to commence formal proceedings if it wishes. That's just simply my recommendation. Number 2, we have a case where there was a test work, okay, and it was done. There's no indication that the person who did the attest work had any licensure whatsoever. The problem in this particular case is witnesses. We have a situation where a CPA firm's letterhead was used, and the CPA firm called the board, called attention to that by filing a complaint with the board. And that's a clear violation, and typically the board would commence formal proceedings. That's what would typically happen, and certainly that would be recommended. Here, the CPA firm believes that some particular bookkeeper must have done this. Okay, and there's some facts that indicate that there was a phone number that was used, but the victim, the mortgage broker who needed the attest work, is not willing to testify. Okay, they're not willing to testify against this bookkeeper. There's a state agency, the Department of Financial Institutions with the state of Tennessee. Duke, like all cases, investigated this, reached out to lots of people, reached out to this department. They were not willing, for privacy, important financial privacy reasons, to open their file. They were very helpful in trying to work through this, but they wanted some confirmation that this financial records would be kept private. And we couldn't give a guarantee or sign any kind of agreement to that effect because of public records laws. Okay? So this is just a unique situation where we don't have witnesses who are willing to step forward. As a result, the recommendation is to close for lack of evidence. We just don't have it. And I hate doing that because this is a clear violation, and it occurred 2 times. So, the board could vote to do a letter of warning, but I think that due to the state of the evidence, we can't. My recommendation is not to go further. Number 3, here we have a firm that considered doing a test work, but then apparently has decided not to. Okay, and they've signed both an affidavit and filled out a form saying we're not going to do a test work. Their failure was they were instructed at a certain point during the peer review process to engage a consultant and have the consultant observe and write a report on a test assignment. And the response came back from the respondent. During that time period, we didn't do a test work. There was nothing for the consultant to review. This particular respondent was instructed to do CPE hours and did them. They just didn't get that consultant report. And there, again, this is a lack of, there's no evidence of a violation. There's no evidence of a test work without enrollment in peer review. And now they're saying we don't want to do peer review at all, and they've signed 2 different documents saying we're not going to do it. So the recommendation there is to close. Now, on the 2 cases that concern tax prep, just stated simply, the first one is not a licensee with this board. So there's an allegation about a particular form that was filled out, should have been a different document. The allegation there is just basically a negligence allegation against the tax preparer, but that particular preparer is not licensed with the board and there's no jurisdiction. And then the last one on tax preparation, here's a case where it appears that in good faith there was a miscommunication. There was a question as to whether a complainant alleges that respondent incorrectly filed a form including income for a certain year that did not really occur. And the paperwork that Duke uncovered here from each side simply differed in the year. It was unclear on the paperwork what year was indicated. There's a slight difference in the paperwork. And it didn't appear to be a situation where there was some type of forgery or misconduct. It just seemed to be an honest miscommunication about a particular year. So even though the CPA here, this is a CPA doing this work, we just don't find that the evidence is sufficient to commence formal proceedings. So the recommendation there is to close. And so that's my 5 cases on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Lee. Kyle Johnson, Associate General Counsel. I have cases 6 through 9, so I'll just give a brief summary of those 4. I'll pause in between each one if you all have any questions. Number 6 on the legal report, that is case number 2026-024701. This case contained allegations related to tax preparation services. Respondent responded by stating the matter had been resolved through mediation. Given that, I really don't think that any action is appropriate in that matter. My recommendation is to close. Number 7, that is case number 2026-033561. This complaint was filed by a former employee of the respondent, contained allegations with issues related to tax preparation services, and that respondent was having someone else complete his CE requirements. The respondent did respond, negating all those allegations. We did investigate the matter, and there was no evidence to support any of those allegations. My recommendation is to close that matter. Number 8, that is case number 2026-034611. This complainant complained that respondent failed to provide copies of her mother's tax returns after her mother's death. She had requested them a couple times. The respondent did respond. I think it was during busy season, but he immediately contacted the complainant and provided the requested materials. So the issue's been resolved in that complaint. I really don't think, based on the response, that there was any malicious intent to withhold the return. So my recommendation is to close. Number 9 is the same complaint really as number 8, and number 9 is case number 2026-034601. The complainant had also filed a complaint for the same reasons, but it was against respondent's individual license. But for the same reasons, my recommendation is to close number 9 as well. Do you all have any questions over those? Seeing none. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lott, Mr. Johnson, thank you very much. This is Andy Bonner, board member. Mr. Chairman, I present to you the 1 through 9 consent orders as a motion and with the recommendations so given and recorded on this document be approved.
Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. Mr. Bonner, thank you very much. Just a point of clarification. I don't know that cases 1 through 5, that we read those case numbers into the record. Do you
Yes, sir.
recall?
I typically don't do it just because it's kind of, it's hard to follow and it's a very good question. I think that the respondents or any of the parties or any interested person in the public who is interested in learning more can see what case was discussed by the case number on the report. This legal report is numbered 1 through 15. And so if there is further inquiry, they can get the copy of this through a public records request and look at it that way. Now, if the chairman prefers, I'll be glad to read the number. It's just kind of up to you.
No, I think, Greg Gilbert, Chair, I think in our minutes, we've been listing the cases, and is that correct, Jen?
Jen Migley, yes, that's correct. And actually, I'm glad you raised that because going forward, we will include a copy of the final legal report with the minutes for
Mhm.
transparency so that anyone could, that a complainant or a respondent, it'll be anonymous. We won't have names on there, but anyone could go and see my case was discussed during that board meeting if it wasn't clear from watching the meeting.
So Lee, would you mind just to read those case numbers?
I'll be glad
into
to.
the record? Thank you.
You want me to, for the sake of the record, do you want me to go ahead and kind of run through them 1 through 5 now, or do you want to just do it next time?
I think you indicated, Greg Gilbert, Board Chair, I think you indicated 1 through 5. So maybe if you just read the case number and number 1 and so forth. Does that make sense?
I'll be glad to. All right. So case number 1 was 2026-008641. Case number 2 was 2026-009031. Case number 3, 2026-016601. Case number 4, 2026-031431. And case number 5, 2026-031311.
Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lott.
Yes, sir.
So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second to the motion?
Rob Vance, second.
Second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda items, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Thank you. Mr. Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Bonner, board member. We'll start with a proposed discipline. That'll be case number 10, and Lee Lott. Mr. Lott, would you present that case for us?
Yes, sir. Lead lot. So here we have a case where there was a respondent CPA filed the complainant's tax return as married filing jointly. But the particular client here requested that at a certain point during the process that the return be filed individually. And she did not sign the authorization for electronic filing, the IRS Form 8879. And I think there was some miscommunication because this was in a divorce proceeding, and then there was a particular, like a mediated agreement between the parties on how the tax return would be filed for this particular couple. But here, I mean, this practitioner freely admits he filed without getting the authorization. And so there are a number of mitigating factors here that are listed. But ultimately, the recommendation is to commence formal proceedings for a violation, for an alleged violation. Of course, I always repeat this, I try to repeat it. The board today with the legal report is not finding a violation. The board's not doing that. That kind of finding only occurs after due process has occurred, notice, a full hearing, chance to question witnesses, cross-examination, and the respondent has to be given a chance to present his or her case. What I recommend for today's purposes with this legal report is simply the commencement of formal proceedings to start the process. That's what this vote is. Now, coupled with that, the board, if the parties wish, the board authorized a settlement. And so the recommendation is that the board authorize settlement so that I can close this case out if the respondent is willing to close it out with a consent order. And the recommendation here, of course, is up to the board. I mean, the board can recommend whatever settlement authority it wishes, if any, but the recommendation here is a $250 civil penalty plus $65 in costs for a total of $315. So that's the recommendation for case number 10, which was, excuse me for not reading this before, case number 2026-022-401, number 10 on the legal report. Now, the next case is number 11 on the legal report, which is case number 2026-027-221. I should also mention there's a 1 at the end of all these case numbers. If you notice that, when a case is first filed with the Department of Commerce and Insurance, it's assigned a number that is 9 digits long and doesn't have that 1 on the end. And then when the case proceeds through the process and is assigned to the legal department, they add a 1. And that just indicates kind of where it is in the process. So if anyone is listening and wondering, well, the case number, that I have a 9-digit number, that's, you just read a 10-digit number, then that's the reason why. Is it right? Am I right about 10? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 10. It's by the time it gets to the legal report, it's going to be a 10-digit number because 1 is added at the end. Okay, so case number 11, 2026-027-221. Here we have another admitted violation. The CPA here agreed to file tax returns for tax years 2023 and 24 and didn't do it. There's a confusion about, oh, well, wait, it was filed or it was filed late or we got an extension. But ultimately, this is a case where there were 2 missed filings of tax returns. Also, this particular respondent here asked for documents and didn't get them. And that's a clear violation of the rule on furnishing client documents. And so the recommendation here is to commence formal proceedings. And again, when I say it's a clear violation, that's the allegation. That's the way it's being presented here. Today, you are not finding a violation. You're simply deciding whether or not to commence formal proceedings. And then the settlement recommended would be 3 civil penalties of $500 each for the 3 alleged violations and costs of $130 for a total of $1,630. So those are my 2 cases on the proposed discipline section of the legal report.
Thank you, Lee. Kyle Johnson. Sorry, did we have any questions, Rob?
Yes, this is Rob Vance. I'd like to ask you about number 10.
Yes, sir.
So I deal in the family law area a lot. And so I'm looking at this and it says they had a mediated agreement, which is a contract. And they were contractually obligated to I guess they delegated to the CPA to decide which was the best way to get the largest refund, which is almost always married filing jointly. So, he followed their contract. I realize he didn't get them to sign the 8879, and that's IRS problem, I guess. I don't do tax returns anymore, but I don't know. I just think it should be a letter of warning, in my opinion, because I realize that seems to be, correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing he didn't do was have the 8879 signed, correct?
Well, the agreement here did not specify whether the taxes will be filed jointly
Right.
or not, right? It did say exactly, it's quoted here, to maximize the refund. And it might be that the way to maximize the refund was to file it jointly.
Right.
I think my recommendation here is just based on the fact that there were actually 2 things. Number one, the practitioner here did not obtain the signature on the authorization form. And secondly, she told him at a certain point in the process, I want to do it singly. I don't want to do it jointly. She told him that. And the mediated agreement didn't say it must be done jointly, you see.
Okay. I'm sorry. Maybe I missed that part about she had instructed him to not do it because they met apparently with both parties, the husband and the wife, soon to be ex, and I guess told him to execute what the mediation agreement was. Then later after that meeting, she came in and said, don't do it.
Yeah, right. It was, I think, in written correspondence, but it was pretty
Oh,
clear
okay.
that she at a certain point said, no, I want to do this. I don't want to
Okay.
do it jointly.
Okay, well, then I
And-
guess that's her, I mean, she's violating the mediation agreement then, I guess.
When you go through the allegations, I think that there's maybe a sense that one of the, it's a divorce situation and it was hostile. And so like one of the parties was maybe thinking, well, I think I would benefit more from a separate filing, something like that. But that's not, to me, that's not the material fact here. The material fact is you had an instruction from a client saying, I don't want to file jointly.
Okay.
And then she didn't sign the authorization form. And then the CPA admits, I just went ahead and I didn't check to see and confirm that the authorization form was filed. I went ahead and did it jointly.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that part about her instructing him to not do that. And usually the only reason you do that is you're worried that the other party is, the husband in this case would be doing something that he's not supposed to be doing on his tax return. So, okay, I got that distinction. Thank you very much. I would say go ahead with your recommendation.
I mean, it had something to do with who can claim dependents and there's tax issues that I don't understand. But to me, the thing to understand for purposes of this report is just that violation about, and of course, the standard that the rule that the board would be authorizing formal proceedings under is this rule that requires the exercise of due professional care. So it's a very general standard.
Right.
But it has to do with the issues we discussed, and not the recommendation here flows out of the way the filing occurred without the authorization. It doesn't have to do with, who actually benefited more by the filing method.
Right. Well, we get this a lot in that tax returns are filed and the other party does not authorize it at all. They have no mediation agreement. They're in the middle of the divorce. And I've always wondered, I'm ready for that to be litigated to see if that's forgery or not. I've never actually heard someone bring that. I've heard that word brought up before because really it kind of is. Because you're authorized, you're saying that I'm authorized to file this return and then you're not. But this guy was, but then you're saying that he wasn't. So I understand now. I'm sorry, I didn't get that second part, but I would say move on. That's fine. Thank you.
Oh, and in fairness to the practitioner here, the practitioner communicated with the with the spouse here, with both parties, and there's no allegation of forgery whatsoever.
Can I ask something? This is Daniel Moore. Just a question about the amounts for 10 and 11. I was just curious what your thought process was on the one that had a civil penalty of $250, and then the other one you were doing $500 per civil penalty. I just didn't know what your thought process was there.
Well, that's really up to the board. I mean, the board picks that number. I recommend it. If you step back and look at violations, at the whole landscape of alleged violations, you kind of view some are worse than others. And the board is limited under statute to 1,000 per violation, right? They're pretty limited. So to go with a full 1,000 for a violation sometimes doesn't seem like the right answer, sometimes. And it just depends. There's a case that we'll be talking about later in this legal report that's pretty much more serious. And the recommendation there is beyond civil penalties. It's a recommendation is agreed revocation. But my thought process is essentially just looking at the limits the board has for civil penalties, 0 to 1,000, and then where does that particular case fit in that range in terms of relative culpability?
Mr. Lott.
In other words, you felt like the 11 was a little more severe than 10 is what you're.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
This is Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. Mr. Moore, I don't know, have you seen the penalty matrix that we have for the board? I don't know that we've reviewed that since you've been on the board, but we do have, it's a 10 or 12-page document. Would that be correct?
That's correct. This is Jen Binkley, Executive Director. I just realized as we started this discussion that I failed to put that on your iPad. So usually you have a copy of the discipline matrix. I'm happy to print copies for the board members to refer to, but we do use the discipline matrix as a reference point, or at least legal does, is my understanding, when assigning civil penalties to that based on prior board discussion.
So again, Greg Gilbert, Board Chair, but Mr. Moore, just to try and help answer that, we do have the matrix, and I know legal uses that and reviews it for these cases, and then it's reviewed by or with Ms. Binkley, and then historically the chairman of the enforcement committee, which is Andy Bonner, reviews that and considers the discipline matrix also. So there's some thought that goes into that, but as Mr. Lott correctly pointed out, the ultimate decision rests with the board. But there is a process for that.
Yeah, thank you. This is Daniel. I just was curious, since it was the same rule that was being violated and we came up with different amounts for the same rule violation. But you explained that it was just your judgment in terms of the severity of each one. So that's all I was curious about. So
It's a great
thank
question.
you.
And it's, a couple of points to, mention there. The matrix is a kind of guidance that the board provides to the staff. And then we look at that, and the first page of the matrix lists a ton of factors. And the reason it does that is because, number one, it's required by statute. There's a section of the Tennessee Code that requires boards that are considering civil penalties to consider a number of factors. It says they may consider, and it lists like eight or more factors. There are also points to mitigate, or there are aggregating and mitigating circumstances in every case. These cases are not cookie cutter. No one case is the same, and they might seem similar. They often do. You can kind of group them up in groups, but no case is every case is unique, and every respondent deserves a kind of a thoughtful consideration of what the penalty should be, or in this case, the kind of recommended settlement authority.
We ready to proceed? Greg Gilbert.
Any more, Kyle Johnson, any more questions on Lee's cases? If not, I can move on to number 12 and 13. Okay, so we'll start off with number 12. That is case number 2026-019-731. This was an internally generated complaint resulting from a continuing education audit for the period of 2023 through 2024. Based on the investigation, respondent did fail to meet their CE requirements for that period. The respondent also failed to respond to the complaint timely. And arguably, the respondent did submit false information on the application as well. I will note that this respondent has now completed their CE or deficiencies for that period. But my recommendation on that case is that we authorize formal charges for violations of Board Rule 0020-03-.163. Rule 0020-04-.031C and Board Rule 0020-04-.031A, and a settlement offer via consent order with a total payment of $1,715. That's consist of a $250 penalty for the violation of failing to respond to the complaint timely, and a $750 penalty for a violation of failing to meet the CE requirements, and then $715 in reimbursement of investigation costs, which is half of the cost incurred in that matter. So I'll pause there. Any questions over number 12?
Rob Vance, quick question. Why were the costs so high on this one?
Maybe a better question for Duke, but I believe we had to spend quite a bit of hours going back and forth with her, reviewing a lot of the materials that she had first submitted with her application, because there were that was part of the problem with some of the information first submitted on the renewals. The certificate dates were different. She did supply some stuff to Duke, so it just took a lot to get in contact with her and go through a lot of documents. I will say in CE cases like this, the majority of the time comes from Duke reviewing all of those CE that is supplied. That can take a significant amount of time, because one of my questions to him is to confirm whether they have what hours they are lacking, or whether they have since provided and met the requirements. Any more questions on number 12? Okay, we'll move on to number 13. That is case number 2026-038-461. This was also an internally generated complaint. It was really a referral from the Board of Licensing Contractors. We see these a lot. So the Board of Licensing Contractors received a review report issued by this respondent. The respondent does hold a CPE license out of state, but does not have a firm permit or peer review enrollment. Based on the investigation, respondent did issue the review report in subject of the complaint to a Tennessee-based client. So he was required to comply with our rules when, in my opinion, he's practicing in Tennessee when he's engaging with a Tennessee client. But he issued that review report without having a firm permit as required by our statutes and rules, and without being enrolled in peer review as required by our rules. So my recommendation on number 13 is that we authorize formal charges for violations of Tennessee Code Annotated 62-1-113D and Board Rule 0020-04-03C8, and a settlement offer via consent order with a total payment of $2,237.50, consists of a $750 penalty for a violation of the lack of firm permit, and a $1,000 penalty for a violation of issuing the report without enrollment and peer review, and then reimbursement of investigation costs of $487.50, which is half the cost incurred in the matter. Any questions over number 13?
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Lott. This is Andy Bonner, board member. Mr. Chairman, just a reference, whenever I go through the reports that were sent by council, we actually look at the rule, the matrix that we have for penalties. In case 10 and 11, rule 0020-30-.07, due professional care, had a range of $0 to $1,000. The typical violation is $750. When I looked at case number 10, 8879 has to be signed. That's a huge statement somebody's making, and they may have an agreement. However, the practitioner should ensure that somebody signs that document in the age of automatic filing or uploading returns to the IRS, and they did not. And then, of course, that in the range of $0 to $1,000, it was $250, if I recall correctly. On the next case, on case 11, council advised that they didn't think $750 for each violation was appropriate. They went down to $500. So there was some give and take there. I thought that was fair. And I didn't have any questions for it. Of course, this board decides whether they're fair or not. And in that range, we still have some movement, if you will. But I believe that they are presented fairly. What I'll do is, before I make my motion, I'll let you call if there's any questions.
Questions?
John Griesbeck. Number 10 clearly sets out some mitigating factors. And that's the one I think was assessed $250 versus number 11 was $500 per occurrence. And so I think the report here provides backup information for sort of reconciling maybe those two penalty levels.
Greg Gilbert, board chair. Other questions?
comments?
Mr. Chairman, I propose that I make a motion that we accept the proposed discipline as recommended by council for the board on cases 10 through 13.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. A motion's been made. Do we have a second? Second. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Thank you.
All right, Andy Bonner, board member. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Johnson gets to have a reprieve here. So we have two re-representations and Mr. Lott has them both. So Mr. Lott?
Yes, sir. The lead lot. Two cases are being represented. The first one is quite old. It certainly falls prior to my time working with this board. It's from 2022. It's filing in May 2023 legal report. And it was a unusual and very vague allegation of a threat of harm. And the conclusion in 2023 was that the matter should be placed in litigation monitoring. A key part of that is that there was a civil lawsuit that directly addressed the alleged threat and other issues. And now here we are. We received a notice not long ago, this year, from the attorney for the plaintiff, or here, the complainant, saying, I've dropped everything. I think the wording is stated here. See if I quoted. On behalf of complainant, I'm writing to notify you that he hereby withdraws his complaint against respondent. So they not only they resolved their civil action, and then they withdrew the complaint. Now, I will say, if there is notice to this board of a violation, of an alleged violation of the Tennessee Accountancy Act or any of the board's rules, the board can act on that. If a complainant kind of later withdraws the complaint, the board's not bound by that. The board can act on a violation in an interest of protecting the public, right? Because the parties really in a formal proceeding would ultimately be board versus respondent. The complainant is not actually in charge. The complaint is just merely giving notice to the board, right? But here we have, and so the mere fact that the complainant said, I withdraw the complaint, you're not bound by that. But based on the resolution of, lengthy civil litigation, the recommendation here is essentially based on a lack of evidence. I mean, we could try to recreate it and recreate the wheel here, but if we've got, in this particular case, the recommendation is to close. This is an aged matter that needs to be closed because there's simply not a sufficiently detailed allegation and sufficiently detailed evidence on which this board could commence formal proceedings. Now, the last case, I apologize. So number 14 is case number 2022-033-211. That was number 14. And the recommendation on that is to close. Now, case number 15 on the legal report is case number 2025-05-0061. When the legal staff presents this legal report to the board, we always do it in an anonymous fashion. We protect the anonymity so that the board can focus on what matters, which is the allegations, the evidence. And here it actually concerns a case where we don't have to maintain anonymity because you're already aware of this case. This is a case that the board reviewed in a informal conference under the Administrative Procedures Act on a effort to summarily suspend licensure. The board probably recognizes that. For purposes of this meeting, I won't mention the respondent's name, I will if you want me to, but I don't think it's necessary. Here, it was a very, very serious allegation of theft from an employer by a CPA, by a licensed CPA. And this particular CPA was indicted. And as soon as the news came across about the indictment, the board started the process to order summary suspension of licensure. And that is a very specific thing that's authorized under the Administrative Procedures Act for administrative boards and agencies. If there's a risk of kind of harm to the public and emergency action is required. In this particular case, the respondent agreed to summary suspension. And so on September 2nd, the board entered an agreed order of summary suspension. And so this CPA does have a suspended license right now. It's been suspended ever since September 2. In the prior weeks, the respondent reached out to update the board and said, I have pled guilty to theft and official misconduct. And we obtained documentation to show that, to confirm it. Our investigator obtained a number of documents. I reached out to the prosecutor, and we obtained documentation that showed that this particular respondent has pled guilty to those two charges. And they're felony charges, or one of them is for sure, and theft of between 10 and 60,000. And interestingly, this particular respondent was allowed by the court to enter into a diversion agreement. So there's a guilty plea, but there's not a conviction yet. Under diversion, under the Tennessee law on diversions, and I'm stating it very generally here, that a criminal defendant, in some cases, if they qualify for first-time offense and it's not of a certain nature, the criminal defendants are allowed to plead guilty and serve some sentence, incur some punishment, but then at the conclusion of some probation period, if they do it satisfactorily to the court will dismiss the case entirely. So here, that's what's happening. It's a 10-year term of probation, lengthy probation, 10 years. This particular respondent is also being required to serve 30 days in prison, divided in installments. And I think might be serving that time even this week, served it this weekend, some portion of the 30-day imprisonment. And there's also an order for restitution. So this particular respondent has been ordered to pay $15,000. Now, the respondent alleges, and there's no dispute about, there's no counter allegation. The respondent alleges that he quickly paid back what he stole. And I say quickly, I don't know exactly when, but the allegation that respondent alleges, and no one disputes, that he paid $18,800 to fully compensate his employer. And there might be some issue, there might have been an argument about why was it taken to begin with? Was it owed? Does he somehow claim he was owed this money? That's not relevant for today's purposes. What's relevant is that this particular defendant, respondent, pled guilty. Now, there is a statute that allows this board to impose discipline for a conviction. If someone is convicted of a felony, the board can, for that reason alone, commence formal proceedings and find a violation and impose civil penalties and maybe even revocation. So that's not the case here. Because of the diversion agreement, there's no conviction, and there might never be a conviction. So the board can't act under that particular statute. However, of course, there are lots of other statutes. This board has great authority to discipline licensees for dishonesty, fraud, gross negligence, violation of other rules, violation of rules of professional conduct, performance of a fraudulent act, any conduct reflecting adversely upon the licensee's fitness to perform services while a licensee. So the board has lots of authority. So here we have an allegation that someone has pled guilty to that he stole. Now, I asked the court staff or prosecutor for any documentation they have where this particular defendant wrote on a piece of paper, "I stole." There is no such paperwork. There was a there's a dialogue that occurs during a guilty plea proceeding where a defendant can admit certain conduct, but here we have nothing in writing. So the question before the board is whether or not to commence formal proceedings for violation of the Tennessee Accountancy Act based on the evidence that we can present. And the legal staff believes that we can, through witnesses and documentation, prove that a theft occurred. Okay? So the recommendation is to commence formal proceedings under the Tennessee Accountancy Act based on the allegations stated here. That's the recommendation. Now, as you'll see, we also, as always, recommend that you give us settlement authority. But civil penalties are not really the primary form of discipline that I think the board should consider. Here, I think the board should consider suspension or revocation as settlement authority. And I'm specifically recommended that the board authorize me to enter into an agreed consent order by which this particular respondent agrees to revocation of his CPA license. And I'm not putting a recommendation in here for civil penalties. Of course, you're not bound by that. Number one, you can require me to seek civil penalties in a settlement, or on top of that, if this particular respondent declines to an agreed revocation, well, that's just the start of the process. We will then start, I will file a document that's called a notice of hearing and charges, and we'll go through some form of discovery, whatever is required, and then we'll schedule a hearing in the future, either during a normal quarterly board meeting or separately, if we just depending on scheduling, and we'll have a full hearing. And then there will be witnesses, and this particular person will be allowed to sit on the stand and explain himself. And then the board can, at the conclusion of that, decide what to do in terms of discipline, if anything. And there will be an administrative law judge assigned to preside, but you will sit as the trial, essentially like a jury, and you will decide how to discipline this particular person based on the evidence that we can show. And there you can not only do revocation, but also civil penalties or any combination of discipline that's authorized under the law. So I know I suspect you might want to wonder why I'm not putting civil penalties in there at this particular recommendation point. It's simply because I think the board should consider giving this particular respondent the chance to agree to revocation. And if we have to go to a formal hearing, then there will be a sword of Damocles, I guess, in theory, if the violation is shown and proven for additional discipline. So let me mention one other thing, and I apologize for taking so much time on this particular one, but it is, of course, important. But again, there is currently in place an agreed order of summary suspension. And this particular respondent has, in the last number of days, filed a request for reinstatement. And that's the respondent thought, well, maybe since I've pled guilty and this criminal case is now has now been in a way resolved, that I can maybe go back to doing some work and earn a living for my family. So this respondent has asked for permission to do that. Now, ask any questions you want, and you just, the board can decide to address that reinstatement application right now if it wishes. But as I explained here, it's technically not at issue yet because there's a separate administrative case. There was separate to all of this an allegation that at some point this particular respondent performed attest services without proper credentials. That particular administrative case is still pending and still being investigated. Mr. Speed recently obtained even more evidence about that from the employer, from the complainant, who alleged the performance of attest services and also possibly some issues with confidential documents. So I am not proposing that this board address the agreed order of summary suspension or the reinstatement application today. As a result, after today, this particular respondent will remain in suspension. The agreed order of summary suspension will remain in place after today. And that can be addressed at a future date when this other matter is finished with the investigation. So I just mentioned that because I want to avoid confusion. On the agenda, it says legal report, and then under it, there's a bullet point that says reinstatement application. And the rules say we have to submit that when someone files that application, we submit it to the board. But the rule also says that you address it later at a future meeting. So that's just kind of funny wording of that particular rule, but it does say submit it one meeting, and at the next meeting, you can address it. So the reinstatement application is not being presented to you today for a decision. The only thing that's being presented is whether or not this board wants to commence formal proceedings for the conduct that I previously described.
Thank you, Mr. Lott. I would say after I read this, I really was in favor of the agreed revocation of the certificate or the license. The reason being is that this board has had a history of when people have had things stolen and they have not been repaid, or they may not have the potential to repay, that we just went ahead and did not worry about the penalties associated with it, but we asked them to formally enter into an agreement to revocate their license. And so I think that this is a prime example of that. But I will ask Mr. Chairman to call the question and we'll see what others think.
This is Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. Mr. Lott, I have a question. I think historically the board has considered the representation cases separately for vote, and given the potential severity of case number 15, do you think it would be appropriate for us to approve the recommended discipline in those two cases separately?
Yes, sir. If the chairman wishes, absolutely, and that certainly makes sense.
Okay.
So since, Greg Gilbert, Board Chair, since we have spent a good bit of time on case number 15, maybe if we discuss it first and approve the recommended discipline for that one. So case 15.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Andy Bonner, I make a motion to approve case number 15 as recommended by council to the board.
Motion is made. Do we have a second?
Sam Bennett, board member, second.
Second, Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. Any discussion on case 15?
John Griesbeck, just as a matter of clarification, did the agreed order of summary suspension, which I believe was last year in September of 25, cover that other administrative case, the 0488891?
It did.
Okay.
It mentioned the attest issue. Now, at the risk of confusing the board, there actually were two administrative cases filed regarding the attest allegation. And one of them was closed for because it was duplicated. It was a duplication. But there is still pending an attest case, and the attest issue was addressed in the agreed order of summary suspension. And if you're wondering how, the agreed order of summary suspension specifically said that you will revisit summary suspension just at a future time, a future time when the board acts. Not that exact wording, but it leaves room for the board to decide whenever it's appropriate. It did not require this board to look at reinstatement as soon as a guilty plea is entered. It did not do that. So you have leeway to leave the agreed order in place. Does that help?
John Griesbeck, yes, thank you. So if we do pursue revocation, the other case is still out there.
Yes, sir.
It's Daniel Moore. Just, I guess if he agrees to the revocation, would that kind of make that other case a moot point?
Well, the board would have authority to do any kind of discipline that's authorized under the statute. That could include civil penalties. It just depends on what the board wants to do. I think we just have to see how things play out. And if this particular respondent agrees to revocation, then it might be that the board wishes at a certain point to close the other one or act on it. It just is up to the board.
Greg Gilbert, Board Chair, other comments, questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor in a second. Correct. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the re-representation of case number 14, I make a motion that we approve as recommended by council, case 14.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Second. Discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay. Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. So Mr. Lott, I think you said this, but I just want to make absolutely sure, no action for us to take on the reinstatement application.
Correct. Correct.
Mr. Chairman, that's a legal report today, but I would like to, we just had this case, number 15, and we talked about summary suspension. And, our investigator and our counselors came to us and said, hey, we really ought to ask for a suspension of license until they go through the court system. I noticed that I wasn't here for the last meeting, but before that last meeting, one of our cases out of Chattanooga that we had a couple of years ago, which was so bad that our investigator came to us and said, we should just ask them, to revocate their license immediately. And the legal got involved, and now a lot of that has been published. And Duke, Mr. Speed, actually, will you remind the board of that case and what's now being said about that case? Because now that the person has been found guilty in court, and just the amount of money that was taken, and this just shows what we're doing for the public here in Tennessee, and how fast this board reacted.
Sure. So, Duke Speed, board investigator. It's my real name too. So, September, October 2023, we got a lot of complaints about a firm that had pretty much shut down, and clients were unable to get a hold of the firm owner. Clients alleged they had paid for tax services that weren't provided. And then there was another function where they provided short-term loans and some sort of investment opportunity, and those funds hadn't been returned. So based on the number of those complaints, we opened an investigation. We put it into two buckets. There was one bucket for prepayment of tax services not provided, and then what we'll call kind of the investment fraud portion. We went out and we interviewed all the complaints that came in on the investment side, and all of them had the same story. They were induced to do this by the respondent. who contacted them and advised them of this opportunity. And what it was short-term loans, 90 days, 180 days, with a very large interest rate attached, about 25% in most cases. And it was offered to those victims that money was going to be used for some sort of investment opportunity. I think couple of them were a hydroelectric plant, another one was for some sort of redevelopment in a rural county. And in most of those instances, in all those instances, the principal was never repaid. So they were out completely. And there were a couple instances where interest payments were made, but it was often very little. So just off the top of my head, with those number of investors that we had, those victims that complained to us, we had about $1.5 million loss amongst those. And so in the January 24 meeting, it was proposed, with all the activity that we identified, and we had pretty clear and convincing evidence of the violation of our board rules and statutes, that was ultimately voted to revocation. It had garnered some press attention at the time, so there was concern as to, if that was enough. We also had information there could be a possible federal or state investigation into this, so there's a lot of parallel tracks going on with this. So I think at the time, the board made the decision to at least, revoke the license at that point. In February of 26, that respondent actually pled guilty in Chattanooga federal court, and they at least identified from their investigation about a $70 million loss. And so I was just looking up to see if he's been sentenced yet, but it's still pending sentencing. So something tells me he's going to be looking at a pretty significant term of incarceration, but that's what we kind of found out with that case.
In your investigation, Andy Bonner, board member, Duke, did you find a common theme about why they trusted this person in Chattanooga, and any comments in that area? Because I know you interviewed everybody.
Yeah, they came back and they said the only reason they did it was their CPA advised this, that they were actually engaged with them for other matters, and this person brought this opportunity up to them independently, and it wasn't something they would have done if not for the respondent advocating for it.
And Mr. Chairman, just to make the point of the importance of this board, this is maybe my last meeting, but that's a great statement and an example there of how this board very quickly came together to go to this CPA and ask them for revocation, which they agreed to. And it took 2 years before, and he's not even sentenced yet. And so I think that fast acting may have saved other people money in the process too. And the suspension of that they recommended on this other case, 15, really was a good example of how this board took action and did things to stop the public from being harmed. And I just applaud this board and our staff and investigators for the job well done, and to continue that same service to the citizens of the state of Tennessee.
Greg Gilbert, thank you, Mr. Bonner. And, one of the more important things that you did when you chaired this board was to participate in the hiring of Duke as our investigator. And I've had the opportunity to work on 2 really large cases with Duke. One was the case, which I think it was the largest penalty that this board has assessed. And the respondent requested an informal hearing for which Duke and I and others prepared for, legal staff certainly. And and then another is an ongoing case that will probably be on our agenda, maybe the next meeting or sometime in the future. But Duke is a true professional, and we are very fortunate to have you, Duke. So thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Mr. Bonner, any other legal report matters?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
I do want to mention, this is Greg Gilbert, board chair, a situation that is ongoing, and I'm looking at my phone because I'm going to read something to you. We are aware of a disgruntled CPA that had an issue with CPE violation, and our staff appropriately communicated regarding the penalties to be in compliance and so forth. And as most of you, maybe all of you know, the TSCPA has an open forum, and this individual has posted numerous comments on it, but I want to read a little bit to you. I'll get email addresses of each board member, haven't located them on the state board's site, and write my plea for leniency. At the same time, I will use this opportunity as an example of just how this punishment does not fit the crime and makes my case for a change in their rules/punishments. I'll post my letter here along with names, email addresses of board members in hopes that some of the other 579 people who got audited/dinged were no more egregious than I was. Perhaps they might join me in this quest. So as I mentioned, this is a disgruntled CPA, but that individual apparently is looking for our email addresses and so forth. And I'm bringing this up solely to remind each of us that we should not respond to any inquiry from that individual. I suppose the only proper response could be to forward the information to Ms. Binkley, because our office needs to handle any feedback or requests regarding that, and not us as individuals. Any comments, Ms. Binkley?
You guys are always welcome and encouraged to send questions or comments from the public my way. And I think a good thing to add to that, Jen Binkley, Executive Director, I think a good thing to add to that came to my attention in the last week or so was a candidate has been reaching out to board members on LinkedIn with questions about experience and the requirements for CPA licensure, which are great questions to ask, right? Like, we want candidates reaching out to us and engaging in conversation, and we're happy to answer questions. But if you guys are getting any sort of communication and you're not sure how to respond, or you're not 100% sure on an answer, you're always welcome to reach out to me or Karen or Lee. And we're happy to either address a question directly with the candidate or figure out an appropriate response. So.
Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. Thank you, Ms. Binkley. I will continue to work on that. We are at about the 2-hour point. Is this an appropriate time for a break, or, okay, 15 minutes? Good. So maybe reconvene at 10:45. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's reconvene our meeting, and thank you for being prompt to return. Our next order of business is getting updates from those of us who are involved in AICPA or NASBA. And before I turn it over to each of you, this is Greg Gilbert speaking, by the way. If you checked your email during our break, you'll see that at 10 a.m. this morning, NASBA provided an email regarding, in part, Mr. Bonner's nomination as vice chair of NASBA. So again, congratulations, Andy. But you knew it because we told you about an hour or so ago before the world knew it. So there you go. Breaking news in this room. So, but again, it's wonderful news, and congratulations, Andy and Michael, on your appointment also. So, okay. We will receive updates from those who are involved in AICPA or NASBA committees. Mr. Bonner?
Mr. Chairman, Andy Bonner, board member. We actually met as a board at NASBA in Wisconsin in July. We got an update on the license pathways for Canada, the MRA agreement. We were told that they lacked one signature, and sometime in the next 2 weeks that MRA will be renewed. And it'll be finalized. We went through our financials and looked at how we're spending for missions and approved a budget to increase that spending for missions for NASBA for the next coming year. We talked a lot about the peak exposure draft, and I want to applaud this board. I know that Jen uploaded that. for allowing Jen and Greg to sign that. And Peak is meeting, I believe, this week to consider that. They're actually going to come back and make some changes. The concern is that they may not make all the changes. And what, from hearing from all the other regulatory boards and jurisdictions. So I would ask that this board consider again to allow the president and Jen to respond to anything that they do republish or this week, because it's our understanding that it's going to be a quicker response period. It's only going to be 60 days. So this board will not reconvene or have a chance for to write a letter. And I think that seeing how you made such an impression with speaking out to what you think, should be done with the APS and PEs, alternate practice structures and private equity, I think it's something that they're trying to get closed this year very quickly. And so understanding, because we have so many announcements coming out. Did anybody see the CBIZ announcement? I mean, that's amazing. And so I'm concerned that the 60 days is going to be an issue, and I definitely want and would expect Tennessee's voice from this board to be heard. And so I would encourage that for consideration. We got an update on the CPA task force and what it's doing and where it is. I would tell you that probably in the next year, we'll probably have some more information from that task force. They're not sharing a lot right now, which is understandable because with the members that are on there from the ICPA and NASBA, a lot more to come. The strategic planning task force for NASBA has almost closed all its rooms. And when they got together, everybody was in a silo. So it was a room and everybody came up with suggestions for the strategic task force. And as board members, we were interviewed. We at the same time, our consultant went around and talked to jurisdictions and state board members at random, pulled a sample, talked to executive directors. I don't know, Jim, were you interviewed on that? So they've taken all this and put it together. It's my understanding that at one point there was over 100 different initiatives, and that has been drilled down. They actually are voting on those initiatives now. When you come to those who are coming to annual, you'll get a list of those initiatives. That'll be the first time our board has seen them. And so they will be public at that point. And then NASBA has included in their budget funds to react and to start reacting to initiatives that have already not been reacted to. I will tell you that some of the things that I think that are in there, the board had already said, hey, we need to do this now. And so, and a lot of software updates and ALD, I'm sure is going to be in there. And so there was a big push to get that done. We also got an update on that NASBA and the AICPA will be having a summit in Washington, D.C. this week. And so given my appointment, I'll be flying to D.C. on Tuesday night and meeting there for the first time during that summit. So I'm excited about that and know some of the AICPA members that will be there, including Mark Cozell, which Brad, the Tennessee Society of CPAs introduced us to him, and he was an instrumental part for years with the board. And he's just a really neat guy. The other thing that we learned in Western that I'm sure somebody's going to talk about, and I'll leave somebody else to talk about that. When we went to the Western Regional, a lot of these same concerns were there. Peak was there with the APS and the PEs. We got a brief discussion about strategic planning task force. And we got, some talk about QR codes on audits or test work and what Puerto Rico had been doing for years. When we broke out this board has already seen situations where a financial statement is issued and nobody takes credit for it. That it wasn't the firm and the individual didn't do it and we can't get information to do anything about it. It's also seen fraudulent statements issued, complaints of that, where nobody is certified or has a CPA license or is in peer review, and there's not much we can do on that except for close it. And what we're also finding in that breakout session was that this is happening across the country. We found out that you can upload your information in and go online, and within 24 hours, you can get an audit report from somebody in Europe who might be licensed anywhere. At that point, I talked to a couple people who had experienced this in another part of the United States where a bank had actually gotten kind of scammed on some of these reports and actually went under because of reliance on financial statements that had been issued that were fake. And I truly believe that we're in the beginnings of this fraudulent kind of happenings because it's so easy to take any kind of report and duplicate it and change it with the technology that we have today that, you can go buy a cheap software product and change the numbers and everything you want to overnight. And it still has that auditor's or that firm's signature on it. And there's no way to prove that that was not released by them. Now I'm going to speak as a banker. When I was in banking, we did not call up to verify that a report was being issued. And that was one of the things that was said. We just know the firms. We knew who issued them, supposedly. We don't know if they were faked, if they were adjusted, or if they weren't put out, if they were manipulated after the fact that they were issued. And in my profession in public accounting for 28 years, we never worried about that. Today, we're dealing with a different type of crook, a different type of personality. And Puerto Rico gave a presentation at that Western Regional that talked about that they had been using a QR code. And it was the Puerto Rican Society of CPAs that helped them come up with it because they were concerned that fraudulent reports were being issued 25 years ago. And I think that, I would hope that this wouldn't have to be a regulatory thing for the CPAs in Tennessee to stand up and say, hey, maybe we have a problem that's starting to happen, because I'm seeing it. I mean, I think that you're going to see it more when I come off this board. I think you're going to see an increase in that. And I do hope that our profession here in the state may consider having a QR code on the statements. Now, why would you even say, why would you want to consider that? Number one, the QR code can be scanned and it doesn't tell you what those person's financial statements are or anything about what was disclosed in the financial statements. It says that, yes, that is an authoritative report. So then at that point, that that firm issued it. If you did, then you could reach out and you could say, hey, can you send us a copy of it if you're worried about the numbers? But if it's a fraudulent report issued by somebody else that's using that firm's title, and we've actually seen that on a report where they just copied it and put it down and put their own financial statements together, you'd know immediately if that firm has rescinded that report and says, hey, we found after the fact we've got issues with this, then you would know immediately, hey, I don't need to rely on this. And we're not talking about a lot of money. But, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, is it really this board's place to say, hey, we need a rule or a regulation or something to do that? I'm afraid in the freedom of information, because we are a public board, that if we did that, then somebody could access any firm's financial statements that have been issued. And maybe they can't. Puerto Rico seems to think they can't because of the fact that It's just the fact that it is a report that's been issued in the list, but you would still have how many reports accounting firms or attest firms would issue in the state. You would have a list of that. And that kind of concerns me. But if our society were to get involved and say, hey, because we kind of turn that peer review over to our society, right? We let them do the peer review for us. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, we got a place where a QR code says, hey, this is legit. We got a place where the society's already getting a list, or the peer reviewer's already getting a list of all the reports that have been issued. So there would be record of every attest function that they ever issued would be there. And if we ever go to the new type of peer review, where it is an online peer review, they're going to have access to that. Somebody's going to have access to that, but it wouldn't be this board. And we don't want that here, where it can be kind of obtained, that public information. But I do think that I would hope that the members and firms, the CPAs in this state and the firms who are issuing attest work would encourage maybe protecting the citizens of this state from harm. And because I do think that is coming. And so it was my kind of last statement as a board member, since I won't be here again but I won't do anything like this again. I would suggest that and encourage that we consider that as a profession in the state of Tennessee, because I do think that it offers some type of protection to the public with that QR code. And that's all I have to update, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bonner. That was great information. And the stamp that Mr. Bonner referred to is very interesting. And based on what I know at this point, I would certainly be supportive of it. I think it protects CPA firms and the public. And I just think it's a really, really good tool. Mr. Bonner did mention an item that would require board action. That is responding to Peak's possible upcoming exposure draft.
Mr. Chairman, Andy Bonner, board member, I would like to make a motion that we allow the president and our executive director to sign a response to what Peak will do at the end of this week, as far as what they're going to, if Peak does not change certain areas of our previous letter, that we give the opportunity for this board to be heard by those two individuals and to issue a response letter.
And Greg Gilbert, Board Chair, I think your motion said the president, and I think you meant chair probably.
Yep,
Chair of the
chair and the executive director. My apologies.
Okay, no, that's perfectly fine. Thank you. I would think and hope that NASPA would provide another template for us to pick and choose from to formulate the letter.
I can't speak on NASBA's
Right.
part, but I would say that, Mr. Chairman, that I would expect that to offer some suggestions of things and wording wise for the chair to look through and decide how to respond.
Okay. So there's a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
John Griesbeck, second.
Second. Now time for discussion. Mr. Moore? Oh.
Repeating the motion be to allow the chair and the executive director to sign a response letter to the disclosure that Peak is fixing to issue this week. Due to the short response time, they're only going to give 60 days to have comments. And they're going to actually reissue the comment letters that, or the report on the APSI and the PE that they're working on for independent standards. And so I think that 60-day period is going to be an issue for us because we're not going to come back until November. And so we would not be a voice to raise concerns if whatever concerns we may have. Now, it could be that they, peak at by the time that they vote in the week, there may not be any need for a response or a comment letter. But if there is, that this board be heard and have an opportunity to respond.
Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. I would think that any response that this board does would piggyback on our initial response. So the same topics and same coverage areas, if you will, so that maybe it would state something like, we appreciate the opportunity to respond, and as noted in our letter dated, whenever our last letter was, our concern relate to these matters, and thank you for addressing item 1 in our letter, but item 2 we feel has not been properly addressed at this point. That would be, this is as new to me as it is to you, but that would be what I would think a response could be.
And I would point out, Mr. Chairman, that the response that y'all actually signed on May the 5th is attached to Exhibit 1 to our Executive Director's report today.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This is Daniel Moore. Will you all send a copy of it around to us?
No.
Well,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, we will, of course.
May I jump in with a thought?
Yes.
Jen Binkley, Executive Director. We will know more. So the peak is meeting tomorrow. I am planning to listen to that call. We will know more about a timeline and the ask and their path forward after that call. Next week, we have a regularly scheduled executive directors meeting among all of the jurisdictions with NASBA. This, I think, will be the primary topic of discussion in terms of a regulatory response, what the other jurisdictions are doing, what NASBA is doing. I think we'll all have a better sense of, like I said, what the timeline and the ask will be after the meeting tomorrow and then the call next week. I think to Greg's point, anything that I would have the authority to put into a letter that would not be first presented to the full board for review would have to be either, like Greg said, a reiteration of what has already been said or in our previous letter or what is being discussed today. So I would be pretty limited in adding or responding in differently or to adding nuance if we haven't previously discussed it as a board. So I feel we could be a little potentially limited there. Depending on what the timeline is, we could ask for an extension. The Tennessee board could ask for an extension like we did with the last letter that was due on April 30th. They granted us an extension. The AICPA did. We could, if sort of depending on the nature of what they present tomorrow, we could call a virtual meeting of the board if Greg and I think that it warrants the board's attention to the level of like we're prepared to write a letter that has more or different substance than what has been discussed. So we have a couple of different options and we'll know more. We should know more specifics after tomorrow and then after a call next week.
Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. Those comments I think are very appropriate. The question is, do we may need the authority today though to do that? And my hope would be that Peak would give us 90 or 120 days instead of 60. It's not going to happen. So,
Mr. Chairman, Andy Bonner, board member, Peak had originally said that they were going to do a 45-day. And so upon reaching out, they converted that to a 60-day because they want this completed and passed and finalized this year. And the only way they can do that is to have everything done because they're going to meet at the 1st of November, and that's when it would be approved. And number one, we would meet after that date. Number two is that they would have to have everything finished and ready to start working on and finalizing by the end of September is my understanding. So it's a time issue. The days just don't work. And so I have been told that will not, the 60 days could even be less, but it will not be over 60. And that's a concern. That's the reason that, I asked that for consideration is that at least this board could be heard.
Are there other comments? Okay, so we have a motion on the table with a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay. I think some of us have marching orders, Jen. Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Does that conclude your report?
Mr. Chairman, there's one thing I left out at the annual meeting, just as a note. The bylaws committee will be meeting to change some bylaws. And so they don't have that ready to present yet, but that will be sent out in the required number of days. And so I know that we'll have some delegates there to vote for that. And so based on what I've seen of it, I would encourage passing that bylaw change, but it's some exciting stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Other reports or updates? I want to provide some information to you. Jen did a great job of summarizing some of the topics discussed at the Western Regional meeting. There are a couple that I would like to give just a little more detail to you. I think they're very interesting. So this is a bit of a UAA update, and there's a committee, it's a joint committee between NASBA and AICPA, but they're looking at changing the definition of a test. And so we'll know about that later. That's all that I know, that they're considering that. And Mr. Lee, that would include, in some states, I think compilations are part of the test function. In other states, the compilation is not. So the UAA, I think, is trying to work on that to have better uniformity. Also, ESOP ownership in CPA firms is something that the committee anticipates being addressed in the UAA. So as most or all of you are aware, the ownership of CPA firms is generally limited, in some cases, at least majority ownership, to individuals. And the question has been whether ESOPs are individuals or an entity or just what kind of animal are they. And so it's interesting that that's going to be addressed by the UAA. And the committee's goal is to release an exposure draft in October. Something else very interesting, and Kara or maybe Jen may know a whole lot more about this than me, but in our breakout session, one of the states that was represented was Minnesota. And I learned that in Minnesota, they have two paths to peer review. One is the AICPA peer review program, which I think we're all pretty used to. But another, as I understand it, is maybe for smaller mid-sized firms, and it is not the AICPA peer review program. It's something that has been developed, I suppose, within the state of Mississippi. But I said Mississippi, Minnesota. So I found that to be very interesting. I don't know if that's something that's going to be a trend in the accounting profession or it's just isolated to Minnesota. But anyway, it's a very interesting concept. Okay. Also, I serve on the NASBA Enforcement Resources Committee. We met in Denver in late May after our Tennessee board meeting. And one of the major topics was discussion about NASBA's participation or NASBA's involvement with federal agencies. And I think most of you know that NASBA has been, representatives from NASBA have been meeting with key players at the IRS, Department of Education, HUD, Department of Labor. And so those discussions are ongoing, and our committee was asked to provide some information and maybe literature to help with those meetings. And so we did work on that at our meeting in Denver. But it's very interesting that NASBA has a way to get in and talk with these agencies, because that's been a real difficulty over a number of years, having that collaboration. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Any other updates? Okay. We will move to old business, and just double checking my notes. So at our prior board meeting, we adopted a new subsection for Board Rule 0020-05-.03. And I'm reading that in part for the minutes. But the new subsection provides as follows: quote, no more than 12 credit hours of CPE can be earned in a single calendar day, unquote. Since we adopted that new subsection, we have received considerable feedback. I have received considerable feedback. Jen has, and we have, I've talked, and Jen has, with Kara, and so Kara has provided her input on behalf of the TSCPA, and I've spoken with NASBA representatives, and in general, as well as some practitioners, but in general, we have found that there's a lot of concern in Tennessee and with NASBA about our new rule. And we've learned that the 12-hour cap makes us, I've heard that it made us the most restrictive state in the country on CPE. Updated information indicates that maybe it puts us in the category of 3 other states possibly. So maybe there are 4 states in the nation that have adopted this. After a lot of thought and discussion with Jen and with Lee, we feel that modification of that 12-hour rule would be appropriate. And I am sorry, I apologize to you. The last meeting, our executive director's recommendation was that we cap the CPE hours in one day, 24 hours. And that was Jen's recommendation. I didn't push strongly enough for that, Jen. I think you were probably right in the 24 versus 12, but we adopted the 12. And so before this goes to formal rulemaking, I think we need to reconsider it. And also, you've heard reports from Jen today and Andy. There is a CPE committee, joint committee of NASBA and AICPA, working on CPE, including this topic. And I'm guessing sometime within the next 3 to 6 months, we'll have some guidance from them. So in all likelihood, we will revisit this topic. But for now, I would hope that this board might reconsider the 12 hours and adopt some higher number, or another option is just to go back to what we had previously, and there's currently, there would be no cap. So comments.
Mr. Chairman, David Crenshaw, board member. I was not present at the last discussion, but I would agree with reconsidering the rule and putting it back at 24 hours. And for a few different reasons. First, I know for board members here that have practiced in public accounting. There are days when you work longer than 12 hours. And so certainly more good quality hours could be achieved. But I also wonder if it's really the job of this board to monitor the true attendance, how much attention is being paid during these courses. I do believe that the course service providers should be doing that with their electronic monitoring and things like that, given a lot of this is done on time. So I also don't love the designation of being the most restrictive state. It might not be consistent with this administration. So I would agree with your recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Crenshaw. And I also should have mentioned this. I did have a couple of talks with Rita Witcher, our assistant director for Department of Commerce and Insurance, and talked with Reed about this rehearing or revisiting this issue, and certainly his office is in agreement with us revisiting it.
Mr. Chairman, Brad Floyd, board member, and I agree with David's recommendation. I think in light of the new information that's come up this morning, Karen reminded me that instructors for CPE are actually awarded 3 times the amount of CPE that they taught that day. So it's reasonable to think that it would be well in excess of 12 hours that someone could report. And not to mention being the most restrictive state in the country is not something consistent with what I think is good for the public or the profession. So I support the idea, and I would be happy to make a motion to reconsider that decision if that's needed. What do you think, Lee?
The board can decide on that with, a motion to reconsider and then a separate motion on how to word it, or can combine those two things. It just depends on how it's worded, whatever the motion is.
Okay. I'd make a motion to reconsider the decision we made at the last meeting first, and if that's approved, consider where you want to put that cap, if there's a cap, but 24 or no cap seems reasonable to me at this point, depending on what's most reasonable for staff to administer over time, but that's what.
Okay. Greg Gilbert, board chair, we have a motion to reconsider.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I like the idea of having more than 12, but I think that for a long time, we've gone without even having a reference to it, to where there was that paragraph F may not be needed, that subsection F. I would ask Mr. Floyd to consider just doing away with that, where there is no reference to a limitation, and then actually pick that back up whenever the CPE committee.
Mr. Baldwin, I agree with you. I think though what we're doing right now is a motion that we reconsider.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
And then we'll do the motion for the meeting.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, then I would definitely second the
Okay, so we
motion
have
for reconsidering.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion on just reconsidering it? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. Mr. Bonner, you were on a roll there. Why don't you continue?
I make a motion to eliminate Rule 0020-05-.03 sub paragraph F from the previous rulemaking hearing last month, and just to do away with that whole subsection there so that we're back to where we were, that we just don't reference it in our rules. And then that way, as we get more information from the CPE committee or task force rather, that we come back and address that at a later date, because there's probably going to be some other things we have to address too.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, discussion.
This is Rob Vance, board member. I have a question. This might be much ado about nothing. Jen, do you have any idea how many people report more than, say, 20 hours in a day? Is that a very small percentage?
So I did a little research since our last board meeting, and we now have the benefit of having about 500 CPE audits behind us at this point. I looked at a sample of those, and the instances that I saw where people did report more than 12, 16 hours were usually isolated individual certificates for self-study courses that were for 20 hours or like I did not see rampant, what looked to be rampant abuse of people submitting tons of certificates all in one day. It was isolated 20-hour courses, which are not unusual. We see this with some frequency.
Mr. Chairman, Andy Bonner, Board Director. I asked NASBA, since NASBA kind of monitors CPE for us as far as providers are concerned, what the deal is with a certificate that would have more than 12 hours. And the example I got was exactly what our executive director was talking about, is that you may have a self-study course and you may do that course 1 hour a day for 3 or 4 weeks. But when you get your certificate, it's going to say that you completed it on this day. And it has all of those days combined, one reporting of hours. And so it's a little bit misleading. They try to get the providers to send out, ones for each completed part, but, you can imagine the cost, the administrative part of that. And so it's very normal to have one that would have more than, so many hours. And for that matter, that's the reason I don't think that we should put a limit there right now. Let's wait and see how the task force addresses it.
Other comments?
John Griesbeck, I agree with what's been presented and would be in favor of no cap, so to speak. I do think, just based on a little research I was able to do before, that Alaska has kind of put out a prototype, so to speak. And while they had a 12 hours, they made it clear too, but this could cause a little work for state boards. They clarified that if you have a multi-day, I've been to a number of conferences over the years where you get 20 hours over 3 days or something. But so maybe what you have to report is 8 hours this day, 8 hours that day, 4 the next. So really 3 reportings for one conference, so to speak. So I think that's something we'll probably see more of going forward, and maybe just something to be thinking about as a state board and the administrative ease or difficulty of that. But it could save a little effort when it's time to audit those or, otherwise review.
Any others? Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Thank you. We good, Mr. Lott? Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, we will move to our new business, and the first order of business there will be the election of officers, and I have been privileged to serve as your chair for the last 2 years. I'm of the personal belief that position needs to rotate among board members, and so I'm not a candidate for re-upping my service as board chair. I do have a couple more years left on the board, which I'm very thankful for. And it's very rare that your board chair, me, makes a motion, but in this case, I feel that I should do so. And so I would like to move that we elect John Griesbeck as the next board chair. So.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion or other nominees? Okay. Mr. Griesbeck, you would serve?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well deserved. John has served the profession, both the TSCPA and then the regulatory side, extremely well. And as noted just earlier in the meeting today, he received a really nice award from the TSCPA. And so, John, again, congratulations. So we now need, we've lost our vice chair, so the chair will entertain a motion for someone to serve as vice chair.
Mr. Chairman, Brad Floyd, board member, and I'd like to make a motion that we elevate our current secretary, Mr. Rob Vance, to the position of vice chair. Rob's been a longtime member and very deserving of that additional responsibility.
Very good. I should have done this earlier on the election for chair, but are there other nominees before we vote? Okay, do we have a second to the motion? Did you
John Griesbeck, I would second.
second? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Congratulations, Mr. Vance.
This is Rob Vance, I guess, the new vice chair. I'm honored. I'm surprised, but thank you very much. I don't know that I'm qualified, but I guess we'll find out. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm honored.
Well deserved, Rob. So now our secretary slot is vacant, and we need a board member to serve in that position. We have nominations.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Brad Floyd, be secretary. It's time to sit up and get going there, Brad.
I was about to nominate someone else, but whatever.
No. Okay, we have a nomination. Do we have others? Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Michael Bryant, board member, second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Great. Congratulations, Brad. Brad does a great job at that because years ago I had the opportunity to serve as, at that time it was called TSCPA president. It's now chair. And but I served 1 year as the TSCPA chair. And well, before that, I was the TSCPA secretary. And I never had to write the minutes because Brad actually wrote them. But so I know he's experienced at that. Carrie, you could verify that also, right? Although Carrie, I think, probably drafted them after she came on board. But anyway, congratulations, Brad. That's great.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
John
sir.
Griesbeck, if I could just interject.
Yes, sir.
I didn't want to
No, you're good.
mess up the flow there of
You're
the elections and all that, but just to say, I appreciate this honor. I've been fortunate to have served with three outstanding chairs, two of which are in this room, Andy and Greg, and also Kevin Monroe. And I learned a great deal from them, and they are big shoes to fill, that's for sure. But I'm confident with this team around us here, we have a great board and tremendous input, expertise, intelligence that we will certainly take advantage of. And I will be the first one to try and take advantage of that. So thank you again. And I look forward to serving this next year.
Thank you, John. And again, well-deserved and congratulations. I need to do something. So again, this is Board Chair Greg Gilbert, current board chair, outgoing board chair. We have a plaque to recognize Andy for his service on the board. Andy has completed 9 years of service on the board, and today he's working overtime because the governor hasn't recommended someone to, or hasn't approved yet someone to take Andy's position. Sorry. And so we could even see Andy at a future meeting. I don't know. Hopefully that we do. That would be great. But anyway, Andy has provided exemplary service to this board, and his input is always welcome and valuable and on point. And Andy, as I said earlier today, has a real passion for the profession, and you've seen it in these meetings. And he takes a lot of time helping the next generation of CPAs. And so he mentors folks, and he just really has leadership characteristics. You've seen some of that in these meetings. You'll see a lot of it when he serves his term as chair of NASBA. And Andy, just want to honor you and present this plaque to you. And the tradition of this board has been that we give board members and board staff and legal staff an opportunity to comment on our outgoing board members. So if you have any comments you would like to offer Andy, as he's an outgoing member of this board, feel free to do that now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Griesbeck. It's easy to step in and make the first comments. I've known Andy for 30-something years, I guess. He was in private practice in East Tennessee. I first met him and having worked a lot in the banking arena. Andy did too. And Andy has grown just tremendously in those years I've known him personally and professionally. He's one of the brightest guys I think I've ever worked with. And what he has done with, this board, and it's almost like NASBA's become another career for Andy on top of everything else he's done. And he's done it faithfully, loyally, and just a tremendous effective way. And so we're really proud of you in Tennessee, the whole CPA community profession. And we wish you the best in your coming years of leadership for NASBA. And thank you so much for all that you've done for the Tennessee State Board and the Tennessee profession.
Mr. Chairman, Brad Floyd, board member, and I'd like to echo John's comments. I've also known Andy for a number of decades. We've worked together in a number of leadership capacities while he was president of the Tennessee Society of CPAs and on AICPA Council and other leadership positions. And Andy has grown into an extremely competent leader. And we're proud to see you accept the role of chairman of NASBA in the near future, or chair or vice chair, soon to be chair. And want to thank you for all you've done for me and the Board of Accountancy. Your service and your legacy here will last for a long time. Hopefully someone will step up and take that next step and offer the leadership that you have, because you will be sorely missed, and we will be monitoring your activities from afar at NASBA, and good luck going forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Any others?
Michael Bryant, board member. So it's not an exaggeration to say I wouldn't be on the board without Andy's support and counsel. And we work together, me as staff, he on the board of directors at NASBA. And he's always been very encouraging to me. I was pleased he had a stronger Southern accent than me. That gave me hope that I could move up a little bit. So, but he's just such a fine, big-hearted gentleman. So thank you, Andy, for all you've done for me.
Andy, I'll miss your presence here quarterly, and I'm glad you're not going too far for the next 3 years at least.
Most of you know that Andy and I typically ride over to these board meetings from Knoxville. And and we don't have board meetings. We don't discuss board matters, Mr. Lott, but we do talk about, we have a strong friendship. And Andy, I think I've mentioned before, is a remarkable chef. And so if you ever want ideas on grilling or smoking meats, or well, it doesn't have to be grilling, it can be any kind of food preparation, Andy can give you the information. He knows how to bake potatoes really well, right, Jen? We've heard that story. But I will miss those rides over, Andy. And we talk about, again, cooking. I'm not a cook, but I enjoy grilling some things and smoking meats, but and families we discuss. And so I will miss those rides over, but we will still spend some time together, of course. But any other comments, Randy? Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say thank you to this board, to the governors that appointed me. And what an honor it has been to serve on this board. The 9 years went by quick. And it's just, I learned a lot. I got to meet a lot of great people, a lot of who are in this room right now. And it's just been an honor and a thrill and a very humbling experience to get to know other professionals across the state and to realize that we all have our hurts, habits, hangups, and our blessings from this profession. And so I thank you for the opportunity to serve, and I thank you for your comments today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy. Again, Greg Gilbert, Board Chair. I've taken time intensely today to thank various members, each of you for participating on the board, and I've pretty much gone down the row on the staff, except I haven't mentioned Karen yet. And when Jen, I guess the transition from Wendy to Jen, we really had a void there because you had me and no leadership at the top, except Karen stepped in and we never missed a beat. And it was remarkable, the work that you did, Karen. And so I'm very appreciative of that. And I know the board is. But I've also heard from both Wendy and now Jen how important you are to the team. So we thank you for your excellent work.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Also, we do have staff members who aren't present today, right? Leanne and Scott and others. So you saw their customer service rating earlier today. And so just an outstanding team, and we're very blessed to have those folks with us. So Jen, please pass on the board's thanks to those members too, please. I think we're at the public comment section. Do we have any notice for public comments, Karen?
No, sir, we don't.
None. Okay. No. No? Okay. Thank you. So the next order of business is for the chair to entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. No second. Those in favor? Aye. Thank you all very much.